video consists of 3 parts. In the first one, I'm gonna show you the abilities of Aurelion Sol. In the second part, you'll have a complete understanding of his abilities, and I will propose masteries, runes and items. And lastly, in the third part, I will give you some ideas about his gameplay. So at the end, you will have a complete understanding about this new champion, so you will be ready for when he kicks off for the Rift. In the first part we have his abilities, and I know that every time you try to understand a new champion's abilities it gets somewhat confusing, but you don't have to worry at all about that, just sit back and let me do the hard work. So his passive is called Center of the Universe, and as you can see it's very simple. It's just those 3 stars orbiting around him, without ending. I want to highlight that. And they deal magic damage to every enemy unit that collides with them. The fascinating thing is that they apply spell effects to the enemies they strike. So if you have Realized Crystal, the stars will slow the enemies. To sum it up, it's like Diana's W, but without the shield. Plus they orbit Aurelion forever, without the use of mana. Before moving to his Q, I want to make it clear that this passive affects minions and monsters too, which is an important thing for the third part of this video. His Q name is StarSurge, and it's a little bit more complicated, but nothing too scary. So Aurelion throws the core of a newborn star, and as you can see from the video, I highlighted the core, but I need to highlight something else too. As you can see, while casting Q, a circle appears around Aurelion, and he is the circle's center, so wherever he goes the circle follows. Okay, now that you can spot the 2 circles clearly, I will describe what they do. So the big circle around Aurelion follows him wherever he goes, and the small circle, which is the core of a newborn star, travels at the direction the Q was used. Now one more thing and you will understand everything. When the center of a small circle travels away from the big circle, it explodes, dealing damage and stunning all enemies within it. And you can reactivate Q to explode it whenever you want. That's pretty much it. Nothing too complicated. I just want to add that Aurelion can move while the core of a newborn star travels, so he can buy some time before it reaches to the end of the big circle and explodes. The W is called Celestial Expansion, and it is extremely simple. He just expands the 3 stars that orbit him from his passive. They deal more damage, and I think their orbit speed increases. That's it, just keep in mind that he uses mana to activate it and drains mana while in use. If he reactivates it or runs out of mana, it returns back to the normal orbit. His E is called Comet of Legend, and its core is that it allows Aurelion to travel long distances avoiding terrain. Now let's read the small letters too. First of all, this ability has a passive and an active part. The passive gives him more speed while he travels at the same direction, but he loses speed if he takes a sharp turn. It's not complicated until now, but you may have wondered what kind of speed he loses on sharp turns. The bonus speed or his base speed? And to be honest, I don't know. It isn't clear in his purview either, but I think he loses his base speed, which sucks, but here's why. His preview says that some of this speed is stored away as escape velocity stacks, and if he receives damage from an enemy, the stacks are lost. And you might wonder what these velocity stacks are. To understand it, let's take a look at the active part of this ability. When Aurelion maxes his escape velocity stacks, he can activate this ability, which makes him able to travel a long distance over the terrain, but he can't return back and will land when he gets damaged. And note that the 3 orbiting stars from his passive are being pulled in while he travels. To sum this ability up, it might seem very complicated, but in the end it's just a travel across a long distance, with a passive part that gives him bonus speed if he travels in the same direction without stopping, but loses speed while taking sharp turns. The lost speed gets stored as escape velocity stacks, which while maxed can be consumed to use the active part of this ability to allow him to take the big travel. And of course, now the ability we all have been waiting for. His ultimate, which is called Voice of Light, and it's very simple. He blasts a wave that damages and slows all enemies struck. with a plus that the enemies who are caught close to him are knocked back. So in conclusion, damage, slow and knockback to close enemies. Now let's move on to the second part of this video and give you a list with his masteries, runes and items. For this part, I assumed that he will be played mid, so the following masteries, runes and items are for mid. So for masteries, you should run Thunderlord's Decree, but these 3 spots can be customized more, it depends on your playstyle. Just before we head to runes, I want to make clear why I chose Thunderlords over Deathfire Touch. The reason is his passive. I think it is very well designed to activate Thunderlords. The runes are more complicated. First of all, you have to understand the potential of this champion. Let me help you. His high source of damage is his passive, but in order to deal damage with it, he has to be close to an enemy and for high duration, but that makes him vulnerable, so I decided to pick some defensive runes for him. He definitely needs HP runes to sustain and deal as much damage as possible in teamfights. I will give you 3 rune pages and you can choose depending on the situation. The first one will be the standard, and this works fine when your opponent laner doesn't have insane amounts of burst damage. The second one is for a game that opponent laner or team has great attack damage, and the third one is if opponent has high amounts of burst magic damage. Now let me talk more about the 2 last rune pages. They are tanky, and the reason why is because Aurelion uses his passive a lot to deal damage, and his passive, in order to work, requires time. But to get this time and not die too early, you need sustain. That's why the 2 last rune pages are tanky. For the items, things get a little bit complicated. I think his build range is wide, but some items are very good on him, so let's start from his core items. Rylai's Crystal Scepter is his number 1 priority and he's must in every game. It gives him the HP he needs and the slow that works extremely good with his passive and abilities. The second core item will be the Luden Seko, because of the speed that helps him at his awesome ganks, and the even better thing is the AoE damage. Another great item on him is the Zhonya's Hourglass, because he still deals damage with his passive. For the boots, you can go whatever you want based on the situation. Almost everything is good on him, but I prefer the Sorcerer's boots for a better damage at the opponent front tank line. Liandrin's Torment is another great choice on him because it provides HP, which is great on him, Magic Penetration, which is very good as he mostly fights with tanks, and another very good thing is that it stacks great with Rylai's Crystal Scepter. Abyssal Scepter is another great choice because it makes him more tanky and the magic resist reduction applies exactly at his ability's range, which is another good thing. Rod of Ages works great too, because of the HP and also the mana, as he will need it for his W Celestial expansion. Athene's Holy Grail should be fine on him because of the mana restoration which he needs, and of the small amount of magic resist that makes him tanky. Now the interesting part of his gameplay. I have to say that when I read about this champion's abilities I got excited, and the reason is because this champion has great potential at fights in epic monster pits. He is well designed to zone enemies at the narrow paths, while your team taking down the monster, and he achieves that with pretty much his whole kit. His constant passive says the opponents that if you want to pass from here you will get damaged. His Q is perfect for the narrow paths around epic monsters, because not only they will get damage, but they will also get stunned. And if things get really aggressive, he can use his ultimate for a massive damage, slow and potential knockback, so his team can secure Dragon or Baron. Another thing I want to mention is his laning phase. His passive makes things a little bit complicated, despite the fact that the way it works is super easy. By constantly having around you those orbiting stars with the potential to deal damage to every nearby enemy unit, it's very possible that you will finally push the minion wave to opponent's turret. Now that has some disadvantages, because you are vulnerable to ganks. The last thing I want to mention about his laning phase is that he has great roam potential with his Comet of Legend travel, because he saves time to reach a lane and ganks pretty fast. Overall, about his gameplay, I have to say that he has to be tanky in order to survive and deal a decent amount of damage. He is very good in teamfights and especially in epic monster fights, and has great roam potential. Sounds awesome. I replaced the subscribe button with this diamond, but this is not just an ordinary diamond. This is a celestial diamond from the depths of the universe. Click it to become one. Oh, and it subscribes you to my channel, but that's not important.